the crop production decreased, and the population, the numbers of people became too large and could not be fed, and starvation and famine, okay, um, became noticeable, and the peasants became desperate. Crop yields. Yield is the amount of food produced on an area of land or by a number of animals. Starvation is great suffering or death caused by lack of food. Famine is the situation in which a large number of people have little or no food and many people die. Rear, it's rear something's ugly head. Rear something's ugly head, or rear something's head means to become visible or noticeable. Rear means the back of something, all right? And if a horse rears, it stands on the back legs, and the legs on in the front, at the front, is raised in the air. That's rearing, the horse rearing. So starvation and famine rear their ugly heads means to have its head up, so it becomes noticeable. Desperate is a situation where you try to do anything to change the bad, extremely bad situation. The kings and elites, as their promise of rain was broken, lost control over the people. Okay? The kings and elites, their promises of rain broken. What does that mean? That means the kings and elites, as their promises of rain were broken. That's what it means. Lost any mystical hold. What does mystical mean? Mystical means involving spiritual power that cannot be understood. Mystical hold. What is hold? If you have a hold over something, that means you have control or power over something. The masses is ordinary people in a society. So what is this part about? The population grew, right? And the farmland became not enough, and there were even civil war. So a lot of the area of the jungle were cut down to make more farmland, but this caused erosion, soil erosion, and the loss of nutrients. And there was a long period of reduced rain and even drought in the 8th century, starting in the 8th century. The production of crop decreased and the population became too large, so there was starvation and famine became noticeable, and the peasants were in a desperate situation. Lost control over the ordinary people because their promises of rain were broken. Do you understand? This is what this part is about. By the 9th century, Mayan civilization began to fall. Collapse means to fail or come to an end suddenly. The king's achievements were not recorded after this time, either on palace and temple writings or in other writings. Inscription is writing carved into something made of stone or metal, all right? It can be assumed that they died with most of the people. Surmise means to say that something is true from the available evidence, but you're not sure about that. Alongside means with, right? Alongside means next to or together with, all right? Archaeologists judge that roughly 90% of the population, Mayan population, disappeared in the next few centuries, few hundred years. Approximately means roughly. Mayan civilizations did not end with one disaster. Thus means right? Catastrophe is an unexpected event in which there's great suffering or damage. It was a long, gradual fall, okay? And of course, the Mayans were still many when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century. But the disease and the Spanish people's harsh and cruelness greatly reduced the remaining number of people fast. Spaniards is Spanish people, alright? Ruthless means being harsh and cruel. And doing whatever is necessary to get what you want, okay? Decimate means to damage the number, destroy the number of people or animals greatly, okay? To a great extent. Decimate, deci means 1/10, okay? Make something into 1/10. So destroy a large number of animals or people. The cities became silent. The jungle came back where there were cities, okay? And the Mayans disappeared, and their cities could not be rediscovered for almost 300 years. Reclaim means to get something back, get something that you lost back, all right? There are cities not to be rediscovered for almost 300 years. What does this mean? This means, and their cities could not be rediscovered for almost 300 years. This means that. Do you understand? Alright, so what is this part about? By the 9th century, the Mayan civilizations began to fall down. The king's achievements are no longer recorded after this time, either in the inscriptions of on palaces and temples, or in other writings. And you can assume that they died with their people. Archaeologists judge that roughly 90% of the population disappeared during the next few hundred years. Mayan civilizations didn't end with one disaster. It was a gradual fall down. But the Mayans were still existing. There were many of them when the Spanish arrived in the early 16th century. But the disease and the Spaniards' cruel behavior destroyed a large number of them quickly. And the cities became quiet, and the jungle spread over the destroyed cities, and Mayans disappeared, and their cities could not be discovered for almost 300 years. This is what this part is about. Okay, so let's go to the questions. Which of the following can be inferred from paragraph 1 of the Mayans? They were the largest group of people in the Mexican area. paragraph 1 doesn't mention the Mayans being the largest group of people, so this is not, this could not be inferred. Some of them were still alive during the 19th century. You can say that, right? By 1839, which is 19th century, they had all but disappeared. That means what? They were closely disappeared, but not all disappeared. So this you can infer this from paragraph 1. So B could be the answer. All right. The peasant farmers were more important than the kings were. This is not mentioned. Much of their culture remains unknown to modern archaeologists. No, right? Because it was the fascinating archaeological discovery of modern times. So that's not right. It became known to modern archaeologists. So B is the answer. Let's look at number 2. Paragraph 1. Which of the following is true of the Mayans? There were more than 1 million Mayans still alive in 1839. Is that right? But by 1839 they had all but disappeared. It means they nearly disappeared, but some were left, right? So this is not right. More than 1 million? No, right? They were all but disappeared, so only a small number was left. They lived in a total of 40 cities scattered throughout the jungle. Is this right? More than 40 cities were found in the jungle. Okay, so this is right. C. The bulk of their society lived in rural rather than urban areas. The bulk means a large part. Rural means countryside and urban means city. C is right, but it's not mentioned in paragraph 1. You have to look at paragraph 3. Okay? No, paragraph 4. Okay? The peasants lived on land and they only went into the cities during ceremonies or religious events. So you can say that they lived in rural areas, not in the cities, but that's not in paragraph 1. It was the farmers who caused Mayan society eventually to collapse. Is this right? It's not, right? The relationship between the farmers and the upper class of Mayan society was very important both to the rise and eventual collapse of Mayan civilization. So it's not only the farmers, it's the relation between the farmers and the upper classes. So this is not right. So the answer is B, right? But the answer sheet says it's C. C is true, but it's not mentioned in paragraph 1. And if you see scattered means spread all over, right? It doesn't mention being spread all over, so maybe you can say C, but this is not clear. C is not mentioned in paragraph 1, but in paragraph 3, and you can think that B is right. So this question is not that clear, but don't worry about that, because in the actual TOEFL test, all the questions and the options will be clearer than this. So we're just going to use this opportunity to practice on our logical thinking. All right, so this is still helpful for you.